Thank you, Donald. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Well, it was all happening here today in the European Parliament in Strasbourg. In a very heavily trailed speech, Mr. Juncker gave his third State of the Union speech, setting out his vision for what the European Union would be post-Brexit. And there was also a little sting in my tail as far as Brexit was concerned too, because he said it would be a sad and tragic day when we left the European Union and that we would come to regret it. Here's Mr. Juncker speaking earlier.
March the 29th, 2019 will be the date when the United Kingdom will leave the European Union. This will be a very sad and tragic moment in our history. We will always regret this, and I think you will regret it soon as well, if I might say.
Well, he did cast me a glance, I have to say, at that particular moment, but he also went on to outline a really remarkable series of proposals. In fact, this was the boldest speech that has been seen in the European Parliament since the days of Jacques Delors over 25 years ago. You see, what he wants to do is to set up an EU version of the CIA and the FBI. He wants European Union foreign policy to be a situation where no country any longer can have a veto. And he wants, and Nick Clegg, are you listening? Because I did a debate with you, chaired by Nick Ferrari, on LBC. When I talked about a European army, you said it was a dangerous fantasy. Well, Juncker said he wants a full defence union by 2025. He wants the presidents of the Council and the Commission to merge so that Europe has one big, powerful president. He wants a common asylum and immigration policy. In short, he wants a united States of Europe, and one in which the Eurosceptic political parties are to be described as extremists and starved of funding. It was, in one sense, a very open and honest speech, but I have to say, I thought it was pretty frightening. This is what I had to say in response to Commission President Juncker. Mr. Juncker, that was the most open, honest and truly worrying speech I've heard in my long years in this place. The message is very clear. Brexit has happened, full steam ahead. So new plans. There's to be one powerful president for the whole of the European Union. A finance minister with fresh powers to, as you say yourself, intervene as and when he sees necessary. A stronger European army in a militarised European Union with a stronger and perhaps more aggressive foreign policy too, and more Europe in every single direction, and all of it to be done without the consent of the people. Your plan to fight the next European elections with cross-European, pan-European lists funded by the European Union, but not, as you said, to fund extremists, means what we will find is genuine democratic parties of opposition will not be able to compete in elections on the same playing field. It is reminiscent of regimes of old. Indeed, the way you're treating Hungary and Poland already must remind them of living under the Soviet communists when you attempt to tell them how they should run their own countries. All I can say is thank God we're leaving. But you've learnt nothing from Brexit. If you'd given Cameron concessions, particularly on immigration, the Brexit vote, I have to admit, would never, ever have happened. And yet, the lesson you take is you're going to centralise, you're going to move on to this new, I think, very worrying, undemocratic union. And you're deluding yourself, Mr. Verhofstadt, if you think that the populist wave, as you define it, is over. If these plans of Mr. Juncker's come to fruition, far from the populist wave being over, I doubt it's even begun. That was my response, and I felt pretty upset. Not for us, because thank goodness we are leaving. That's my view. But I feel pretty sorry for democracy in Europe once we've left, because clearly, with Brexit, it is now full steam ahead. And I wonder, his comment that we're going to regret it because we're leaving. I wonder, do you agree with that, particularly given the plans he's outlined today for a centralised state with vast power at the centre and increasingly very little room for nation-state parliament at all? So tell me, does Mr. Juncker speak for you when he says we're going to regret voting for Brexit? Or has today perhaps opened your eyes? If you want to turn the clock back, rerun the referendum, fine, call me on 0345 6060973. Or perhaps like me, you think, given we now see the true intentions of this project, the sooner we're out, the better, in which case text to 84850, and any opinion you choose, provided it's clean, using the hashtag Farage and LBC, you can tweet at LBC, and of course, you can watch live on Facebook. I'm here in the European Parliament. Send me messages there too. And my first caller this evening, who's never called the show before, is Emily in Colchester. Good evening, Emily.
Hi, Nigel.
Hi. So, does Mr. Juncker speak for you? Are you going to regret not being part of a union with a powerful president and finance minister and common policies on defence and asylum and everything else?
No, he doesn't speak for me personally. I share some of his views, but I wouldn't say all of them. I don't think I'm as dramatic as him. However, you know, I do feel extremely disheartened by the result. It's caused me a lot of nervousness. I'm worried about, you know, I do respect the vote. I understand, but I'm just sad. I'm sorry, Nigel.
No, that's all right, Emily. I mean, but let me ask you this, Emily. Whatever you thought you were voting to remain in, and remember that the Remain campaign said the uncertainty was voting to leave. Staying meant certainty. Actually, I always said staying didn't mean certainty because we didn't know what the European project was going to become. When you learn today of what the European project, Emily, is going to be, would you still vote to remain in it?
I voted Remain personally. I like freedom of movement. I like the fact, you know, it has removed a lot of, you know, it has made trade easier. I don't know what the future of the EU is, but I don't know what Brexit is. They're both equally uncertain, aren't they, really?
Well, you know what? In truth, everything is uncertain. No one knows where we're going to be in a week or a month or a year's time. Of course that's true. But I do think that what Mr. Juncker has done today, openly and honestly, is to explain the type of European Union this is going to be. And this is, Emily, a United States of Europe. That is what he...
Nigel.
And I mean, would you want to be a part of that?
It's like how you moan about how, like, the left or centre media attacks you. I feel like you bang on so much about Juncker. It's like, sorry.
Do you know something, Emily? Do you know something, Emily? Do you know something? I always say nice things about Juncker personally. I shook his hand this morning at 9 o'clock before he spoke. We exchanged pleasantries. We asked each other how the summer was. In many ways, on a personal level, I quite like Mr. Juncker. It's just that he is a fanatic, Emily. He wants to build a United States of Europe, regardless of whether the people of Europe wants it. And well, honestly, I would contend, Emily, that actually to do this without seeking people's consent is a mistake. So, Emily, you voted Remain, but would you vote Remain if it really was, in tooth and claw, a United States of Europe?
Probably, yeah. I'm sorry.
All right, fair enough. No, don't apologise. No, I mean, you obviously like some aspects of the European Union, and Emily, that's fine. But, you know, we're all living in democracies, and at least we had a referendum. The rest of Europe is going to get all this imposed upon it without having a say. Emily in Colchester, I thank you very much indeed for your call. And Matthew is calling me from Middlesbrough. Matthew, good evening.
Hi, Nigel. You all right, mate?
I'm all right, yeah. So, what do you make of Mr. Juncker today, then?
I don't regret voting to leave the European Union one bit, and I actually think it was a thinly veiled threat, to be honest with you.
Go on, explain.
Well, he was almost inferring that, speaking from the European perspective, that we're going to make you regret this. That's what I inferred from it, anyway.
Yeah, wasn't it interesting, the way he talked about, we're going to sign trade deals with Australia and New Zealand before you leave, and things like this. No, I think there was a little bit of boasting almost going on there today.
There was boasting going on, and there was malice as well.
Do you know something? This is my real upset with these negotiations, that I feel that what Juncker and Barnier and Verhofstadt and all the others are representing, they're representing Brussels and Strasbourg. They're not representing the member states, the companies, or the workers within them. So no regrets from you, Matthew. And now that it's a United States of Europe that they're building, can you see us, if we ever had a second referendum, rejoining?
I wouldn't have thought so. I don't think the British people would let that happen. We rejected it once, and we'd reject it again.
I think you're right. Matthew Middlesbrough, another first-time caller, I thank you for your opinion. Nigel, it seems Mr. Juncker wants to paper over the cracks, says David. Well, David is very interesting. He barely mentioned any of the problems that the union's got, namely that the Hungarians and the Poles are now at war with the European Court and the European Commission. He barely touched the issue of Islamic terrorism. He was trying to pretend everything is fine and rosy in the garden. As time goes by, the more I become convinced that we have to go, says Stella in Essex. So all opinions welcome on this show. The Commission President Juncker's speech today was very heavily trailed and advertised. What we didn't know was the stuff he added right at the end when he talked about getting rid of the two-president system, having one very powerful figure, moving on to a much fuller, deeper union that would be a United States of Europe. And I have to say, there was quite a buzz here this morning. I don't think I've ever seen quite so many camera crews, radio teams, snappers, photographers, all around the outside of this building. And in the chamber, those people who I've known for many, many years, the really committed federalists, they could scarcely believe what they were hearing. They were amazed when he talked about, fully completing a military union by 2025, adding that to a foreign policy where no country could veto military action or indeed going to war. And it was a very comprehensive speech, because he even talked about the content of fish fingers in Slovakia. So there was no aspect of life post-Brexit that he doesn't intend to control. And I saw people like Guy Verhofstadt, normally very critical of the Commission, normally urging them to push on to full political union, giving a big thumbs up to Juncker after he sat down, after he finished. Similarly, Elmar Brok, very senior, a German MEP, one of the most committed Euro-federalists here for decades, talking to me afterwards, saying how absolutely wonderful the whole thing was. So they loved it here. But what I find interesting, I'm really interested to know what people who voted Remain, being assured that voting to stay, nothing would change. I wonder what they think. And I get by text, Remainers, did you know what you were voting for? EU President, EU Army, EU enlargement, joining the Euro, and a United States of Europe, lol. No, I don't think they did. But the one really good piece of news is this Juncker plan is so extreme that no British politician ever again can willfully lie to us, say, oh, don't worry your little head. It's just about trade. It'll all be fine. It doesn't really affect us. The kind of thing, that the Cleggs and others have tried to do, frankly, over the years. Now, if they ever were able to force a second referendum upon us, I would say the chances now of the pro-EU side winning that referendum are pretty close to zero. It's the one thing out of today that cheers me up. I wonder how it makes Steve in South Ayrshire-Field. Good evening, Steve. You're on LBC.
Hello there, Nigel. I'm a first-time caller.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
What was it that motivated you, Steve?
Yes.
Go on. Go on, tell me. What was it that really motivated you to pick up the phone about Mr. Juncker's speech? Was it the fact that they're pushing on to the United States of Europe?
Yeah, it's really about this having a European army is quite terrifying, actually. If the European Union goes down that route, I think that's actually a big error. That needs to be stopped And I don't know, because I voted Remain, but, you know, the European army, I mean, you've got other things like they want to maybe centralise the banks and so forth, and, you know, it's just quite dangerous, really.
But you were told, Steve, you were told, as a Remain voter, you were told, were you not, that leaving was the risk? Because leaving, we didn't know what the future was, and Remain was certain. Now it's clear that actually Remain wasn't certain, was it?
Well, no, I mean, no one can really look into a crystal ball and tell whether leave or Remain is you know, what's going to happen in the future. No one really knows. I think a lot of people voted Remain because they, you know, for the status quo. Voting leave, you know, what can happen? Anything. You know, the trade deals look difficult at the moment. It's by all means uncertain. But I would say what you're saying about the European army is I 100% agree with you. Well,
you know, Steve, I'm worried. I'm worried about two things. One, that actually it's a direct challenge to NATO. And Juncker said today, oh, NATO approve of all of this. I tell you what, I know that there are many in NATO that don't. It's very difficult to have two parallel systems work together, and there is a very deep anti-Americanism in much of this European project. Literally, just either scratch their mind. And secondly, what it means is you have this army, and you have it with a foreign policy where no longer can one country veto it. So a country like Ireland, for argument's sake, that thinks it's neutral with the Juncker plan isn't neutral. Ireland could say no, find itself with no veto, and getting itself involved in military action, perhaps anywhere in the world. And I'm worried, Steve, that once they've got this army and a much stronger foreign policy, they will start to affect them up. So, Steve from Southend, thank you. And Steve, you know, making the very valid point that a lot of Remainers voted for the status quo, but folks, that status quo changed today, and it changed significantly. Juncker's speech has reinforced my decision to leave. It is chilling to imagine Juncker's European vision, says Mickey. Mickey, I'm going to tell you a little bit more later on in this show about the most chilling aspect of all of it, which is what he intends to do to elections and, indeed, to democracy. I have a feeling that the EU will regret us leaving somehow, says Andy. And Janet says to me on Facebook, could a Remainer please explain why they want a European Union that becomes a state and has within it no borders and really no nation? And I, you know, I wonder about that. I really do wonder. Come on, you're a Remainer. Ring me up and tell me that actually you were happy for all of these things to happen. You were happy for us to be part of a union moving in this direction. Now, having mentioned America, our next caller is coming all the way from California, and it's Matt. Matt, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Nigel. Good to finally speak with you. So my background is I'm a PhD student back in the UK. I'm doing some temporary work over here at the moment. And actually, you know, being in academia in the UK, being a Leave voter is, you're kind of a minority, right? I kind of feel that my position was completely vindicated by the State of the Union address today. So, like, the way I was thinking about this was that everyone's arguing that we're too far entangled with the EU, right? All these years of EU law, etc., to actually make leaving possible. Well, it seems to me that as time goes by, the EU becomes more integrated, and, you know, they took a big step towards an intent, at least today, and therefore there is going to be no better time than the present to leave if we are ever going to leave, right? So I kind of feel this argument was missed in the debate a lot, is that, and you did touch on it, and I did respect that. You were saying that Remain wasn't the status quo, right? And this goes to prove it, and all we're talking about is a different rate. And, like, I don't want the UK to not be a state anymore, you know, its own entity. And I look at people like Guy Verhofstadt, who I do actually have a lot of respect for, because at the end of the day, he sticks to his guns. I don't agree with his opinions, but at least he's consistent. But he's constantly using this like Thatcher quote. Well, I say constantly. I've seen him use it a couple of times with respect to her praising the single market. But they always seem They always seem to omit the Thatcher quote where she's saying how moving towards centralization of European powers is absolutely the opposite as to what we would want, right? If you're trying to force this identikit European identity on people, that's incorrect. And the selective quotes are very interesting, right? And yeah, so looking back now, I was called bigoted, I was called racist, everything, as every Leave voter.
Oh, join the club, Matt. Yeah, join the club.
I mean, it's funny, the day after the Leave vote, June 24th, I was actually flying out to San Francisco for a conference. And, as soon as anyone heard my accent, it was like, oh, my God, the UK's left, you poor thing, are you okay? The assumption being that, I would therefore be a Remainer because I was an academic. And you came up quite a lot as well, actually. You were lambasted.
I know. I was the great hate figure, Matt, or some people are lovely too, but no. I mean, look, none of this, Matt, none of what's happened today surprises me one little bit, because this is what they planned all the way through. And I tell you something, had we voted in that referendum last year to remain, had the status quo as it was sold to us prevailed, today people would be absolutely ringing up this show and going berserk. And all I can say, Matt, is well done you for having the independence of mind to stand up against your establishment peers. And thank goodness, Matt, we voted Brexit, given where Juncker wants to take the EU.
Can I say one more point on this?
Sure.
That there is something that I feel is inherently broken in the argument for Remain and saying that you are racist for wanting to leave. In that, I don't know, because I actually look at the policies and I see what you're understanding, and UKIP is pretty much as close to libertarian as I can see in some major party, right? And I don't see how it's unfair to say that any immigrant should be subject to the same standards, right? Whether it be qualifications, whether it be criminality, etc. This is what happens in the US. It happens in Canada, right? I went through the immigration process in the US to come here, and it's like, I don't think it's racist that they held me to a standard, right? And it's like, you don't need free movement to have the movement of labor and talent. And so I don't see why it's the case that we should have a two-tier system. I was co-supervising a student from China, actually, and she was asking me why Theresa May had to stop this kind of working period after her qualifications. And I was like, she just didn't understand. She's like, we don't want to stay here. We just want to get some experience. And she was visibly upset.
I know. And Matt,
what can you do?
When they call people like you bigoted and racist, what they're doing is they're playing the man and not the bull, because they can't cope with the arguments. And I thank you very much for your long-distance call from California. Matt, yet another first-time caller to this show. You were told in the referendum, you were told if you vote to remain, you're voting for the status quo. Nothing will change. It's all going to be absolutely fine because we're doing well. And today, Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker blew that out of the water by making it absolutely clear the European Union is pushing on to have one powerful president, a finance minister with the right to intervene, all countries to join the euro, a foreign policy where no one has a veto, a full European army, and on and on and on. And I think if we ever held a second referendum, if forced upon us, there'd be no chance of us voting to rejoin this organisation, given what Juncker has said today. But another story that emerged today was about Theresa May's snap general election that took place in June. Taxpayers, it cost £140 million. That's right, 98 million spent on returning office fees, 42 million on delivering election literature. 140 million quid was spent, and what did it achieve? Absolutely nothing. So if you're angry, I think you've perhaps got every right to be. Mind you, 140 million cost for being a member of the European Union is pretty much contribution, so I wouldn't worry about it too much in that big picture. And I'm looking forward, I'm excited about the day when we're free of this union and not wasting all this money and getting on making friendships with other parts of the world. I just would like to have friendship with this part of the world too. But I worry that Mr. Juncker and Barnier, Verhofstadt, are doing their best to scupper any sensible deal. So, Connor in Exeter, does Jean-Claude Juncker speak for you when he says that we're going to regret having voted to leave?
Absolutely not. He most certainly doesn't. I think it's very interesting. I think Juncker's comments today just kind of serve to represent really how, in my opinion, terrified the European Union is, how terrified the establishment is. I think Brexit for them was a massive wake-up call. I don't think they ever listen to the British people's concerns, or anyone's concerns for that matter. I think they're terrified of us making a success of it. I think Juncker's looking for almost a power grab, if I'm honest. I think he's frightened. I think he wants to create his United States of Europe before it's too late, before it all topples on top of him, before other member states realise, that there is opportunity outside of the Union. I think the most dangerous issue for me is actually that democratic issue. For me, though, and
I haven't really elaborated on that yet, Connor, but I will. But first, just say, the thing that amazes me is they've learned nothing from Brexit. I mean, look, had Cameron come here, they'd given him some decent concessions on immigration. You know something? Remain would probably have won. Because Cameron could have said, look, I'm just proof we can get our own way in the European Union. They gave him absolutely nothing. They lost the referendum. But the lesson they've learned from this, apparently, is to do more of the same. And I think that will spark, a lot more bad feeling across the rest of Europe. But, Connor, here's what he also announced today, and this is the point I'm making about democracy. The most sinister aspect of everything that Juncker did today was what he said about democracy. He said that he wants the next European elections to be contested by transnational, cross-border European political parties, and that those parties will be funded by the European taxpayer. But, he said, we should not be filling the coffers of anti-European extremists. Now, in his definition, anyone that questions his vision is an extremist. I'm certainly an extremist, and 52% of the British people are extremists as well. And what I think is going to happen here, Connor, is you will see big money being given to pro-EU parties, no money being given to anti-EU parties, and if they then try to raise that money privately, they'll be capped in terms of what people can give them. And I think, Connor, what they're trying to do is to tilt the field of play for the next European elections to give the electorate a massive advantage. And frankly, I think with this and the way they're treating Hungary, Poland, I think, Connor, we're seeing a new form of communism.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think for me, that's always for me been the most dangerous thing about the European Union. That's why I voted leave, and that's why I'll never, ever change my mind. It's simply down to that fact that I think it was built from the ground to be unaccountable and anti-democratic from the very beginning, and that's just beginning to show now as they start to try and achieve this dream of theirs. That's just, that's could never.
Well, my view, Connor, my view's always been: don't call the European Union undemocratic, call it anti-democratic. And I think Juncker proved that today. And I have to say, for those parties left in this Parliament and across the rest of Europe who believe, Connor, in similar things to you and me, life today just got a whole lot tougher. And my worry is if they make it impossible for people's democratic voice to be genuinely heard, then people will go beyond democracy and seek other means of expressing their views. And that's really worrying. Connor, I thank you for your call. Hi, Nigel, from Ramsgate. You have always said this about the European army. Thank the Lord we are coming out. I noticed no politicians have made a comment on this yet. No, and I don't think they will. They'd rather pretend it's not happening. Femi is calling me from Vienna. Good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you doing?
Hello, very well indeed, thank you. Now, you're you've been on this show before. You're a keen observer of all things European. What did you make of Juncker's speech today?
Well, I might surprise you to say that I don't fully agree with everything that Juncker said. I'm not a fan of his plan for the euro and the European army. That's one thing that I'd like to say. That requires unanimity, because all defence policy at the EU level requires unanimity. It's the reason why they haven't been able to stop us selling arms to Saudi Arabia and blah 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 blah. So if we were to remain in the EU, the European army wouldn't be happening. So it's like essentially complaining about who your former partner is dating when you're the one that dumped them. The fact that we're leaving is the reason why this is allowed to happen. And because of that, if the European army goes ahead, which is more likely as a result of Brexit, the UK army will be one of the smallest ones on the continent.
All right, Femi, if you want to get technical, and we won't spend too much time on this because it bores most people, but of course they wrote into a previous treaty the principle of enhanced cooperation. And what that means is that even if Britain had stayed a member, we couldn't have stopped the European army because the others could have pushed on and proceeded without us. But what I will agree with you, is I did get the feeling today that what Juncker was really saying was, look, we've got Brexit, the Brits are going. Those pesky Brits that keep on saying, are you sure you've got this right? They're gone. It's our opportunity to go full steam ahead. And I did get that feeling. So,
you say that they can push on with the European army without us. That will happen with or without Brexit. With or without Brexit, that happens. So Brexit doesn't change its thing in that respect. And also, a lot of your arguments are based on Jean-Claude Juncker. I think it's important for listeners to know he leaves in 2019. So having Brexit in 2019 to avoid the policies of a man who won't be there once we leave makes almost zero sense. And also
But they're very clever. But they are very clever, Femi. They are very clever because what Juncker has done with this plan is he's put things in place to centralise power more deeply, to take power away from voters of member state parliaments, but they've done it in such a way that they will avoid, at all costs, having another European treaty, and therefore there'll be no referendum on this massive advance of European centralisation. And I genuinely think that if they really do pursue this path, and I tell you what, there was a standing ovation in this Parliament today for it, if they pursue this path, I think there'll be considerable anger across much of Europe.
You mentioned this undemocratic point, and you've said time and time again the EU's anti-democratic, that it's only the Commission that's the sole source of law that makes proposals. But I'm just wondering, have you been telling the whole story in that respect?
Yeah, look, the unelected Commission has the sole right to propose legislation and to propose the repeal of legislation. That is how the system works. The one twist to this today that Juncker brought in is that commissioners would be allowed to stand as MEPs. So they may well be an elected element on transnational party lists in the next commission. But if that's an increase in democracy, the decrease in democracy is that member states and individuals lose their ability yet further to influence affairs. And, Femi, most worrying of all, is they don't want, under this new system, to fund parties that oppose the union. Femi, as ever, I thank you for your instructive knowledge and for your call. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on RBC. It's 8:45 here in Strasbourg and 7:45 at home.
Coming up at 8 on LBC, Clive Bull.
Labour is attempting to block the tuition fee increases after forcing the issue in the Commons. Are they right to try to stop student fees rising by another £500?
Clive Bull on LBC. Come to Galliard Homes for brand new London apartments from £225,000 with estimated yields of up to 5.8%. Westgate House is superbly located just a 6-minute walk to the Tube that has you in the West End in 21 minutes, which is roughly the same time it'll take you to drive to Heathrow. There are exclusive on-site facilities such as a private health club, screening room and 24-hour concierge. To buy in London from £225,000, Come to Westgate House, Westgate, London, W5 1YY from 5 p.m. on Friday the 15th until 5 p.m. on Sunday the 17th of September. Call 0203 770 6300 or visit galliardhomes.com. That's galliardhomes.com.
Moving house, nightmare. I need a plasterer, plumber, electrician, builder, painter, locksmith, gardener, and somebody to move my valuables, the drinks trolley. Relax, relax. It's Trust a Trader. They have all the tradespeople you can think of, reputable and reviewed, so you always get a job well done. Well done me, I say, for getting it all sorted. I shall reward myself with a cheeky tipple from the trolley. Chin chin, pass me the gin. Visit trustatrader.com.
Trustatrader.com. Laughing, loving, playing, guiding, caring.
Being a parent doesn't stop when your life does. Take care of your loved one's futures today at legalandgeneral.com, the UK's #1 life insurance provider.
Growing, learning, dreaming.
You are forever a parent. Cover from £6 a month. Limitations and exclusions apply. Claim based on new life insurance sales in 2016.
London. There's 8.5 million of us, all in a hurry to get somewhere. To work, school pickup, or a first date. Hey, who knows? This time it could be the one. So why can't we be more considerate of each other and help everyone get there on time? By keeping your cool with other road users, helping others off the train when they feel ill, and folding your buggy to let wheelchairs on the bus. Because we think you'll agree, London's better when we travel kind. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Award-winning Howarth Homes is delighted to announce the forthcoming release of their latest luxury development, Teddington Gate. A secure private development of just 35 individually designed and highly specified 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. Minutes from both High Street and Mainline Station. Teddington Gate represents a rare opportunity to buy a fabulous new home, a short stroll from stunning Royal Bushy Park. Prices starting at just $359,995. Register now for our sales event on the 29th and 30th of September by visiting teddingtongate.com.
This is LBC, live from Strasbourg, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
There was no stopping Jean-Claude Juncker this morning. He was going for gold. They're going to build a United States of Europe. They're going to centralise powers, have an army, foreign policy that can't be held back by any individual nation, a finance minister with huge powers, and all member states must obey the rulings of the court. None of it could have been clearer. I wonder what Paul in Leamington Spa, another first-time caller, made of that.
Nigel, thanks for having me on. Now, if you remember Star Trek, we had one of the worst examples in the book. You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile. That's what it sounds to me. Now, I am frightened in the direction they're going. They are crushing democracy. This announcement is made today will, in my opinion, cause more ructions in every single country about, oh no, please no. No more control, no more red tape. And the frightening aspect is they want to form an army. Now, you've only got to look at the lack of cohesion within the structure of the EU. Take the Hungarian Prime Minister the other day. You have no right to change our culture. Now, he did not listen. He did not mention that man today. And he should have done. He should have said, look, we know we've got concerns in the Eastern Bloc countries, but we're not going to mention them today because they're not worth mentioning. Well, I'm sorry, Nigel, but they are. Because they are.
Well, what he said was, Paul,
we're talking about.
Paul, what he said, and you're quite right, he didn't mention Viktor Orban, the very popular Prime Minister, strong Prime Minister of Hungary, didn't mention Hungary by name. He did say there are some member states who don't always agree. But, he said, the ruling of the court must be absolute. So it was absolutely clear that if you're a member state of this, you have to do what you're told. I mentioned Hungary in my speech. I also mentioned Poland in my speech. And the EU are telling them, Paul, how they should live. And I've got friends in those countries who say, gosh, this, is reminiscent of the way that Moscow used to give us orders and give us instructions. And I wonder for how much longer countries like that who've not been independent for very long. They've lived under Nazism and communism and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. I wonder for how long they are really going to put up with being treated like this.
Well, you said, didn't you? You said, and he alludes to it in his speech about nationalism, populism. It's the term. And he mentions how, he believes he'll crush it. Well, he's a fool. He's a completely deluded fool. And so are the rest of his crew. Because all this is going to do is going to whip up more and more anti-EU rhetoric. I'll guarantee you. Because, they are giving us nothing at all. I mean,
I agree with you.
Facebook. I've just posted on Facebook, Nigel, give the members of the EU a democratic vote. Give them a referendum. Now, if he said to me today, look, Paul, I agree with you. I'm going to give every single country the right to vote on membership to the EU. Then I'd say to him, right, Jon, despite what Nigel thinks and the rest of us think about you personally and privately, I'm going to give you respect on this issue. You know what I mean? But they will not give us democracy. Democracy is out of the question. They want the little man like me.
I think after the Brexit referendum, I don't think they ever want to see another referendum on EU membership anywhere else. Paul, I thank you very much for your call. Paul from Memsbar, they're feeling very passionate. Juncker has got this badly wrong and will actually stir up more opposition to the EU. I think it'll do it in Britain too. Irene says Juncker is just making Brexiteers more determined to keep up the pressure. Anna says, I think Juncker has performed a great service today, confirming what we already knew or feared. Well, I'm very happy to take positive tweets if you want to send them in. No regrets at all. It's all just taking too long, says Janice. Isn't this the same plot as the Star Wars saga? We all know how that panned out, says John. Anthony is calling me from Brian Barnett. What did you think of Jean-Claude Juncker today, Anthony? Is he right that we're going to regret not being part of this new United States of Europe?
Oh, good evening, Nigel. Nigel, just before I do get on to that point, I find it really interesting that yourself and your acolytes, in terms of, are so hypocritical when it comes to talking about democracy, and I'll tell you for why. I've heard on the radio countless times where Brexiters constantly go on about respecting people's democratic rights, but 48% of the electorate, voted to remain. But yet, not one of the Brexiters would want someone or an MP or in the cabinet that was a Remain minister, but yet 48% of the British electorate voted, and they want all of the government, all of the cabinet, who are Brexiters. So where is the democracy in that? So that's my first point. Totally hypocritical.
Well, hang on, Anthony, hang on. How is it hypocritical? How is it hypocritical, Anthony, to say, for Brexiteers to say, that they want a government to carry out this very important change and reform for our country to be made up of people who actually believe in it? How's that hypocritical?
What about the 48% of the electorate that did vote? It was a 52 to 48%, Nigel. A win's a win, granted, but 48%. What are we to do? Discard their votes? Do they not mean anything?
No, of course not. Of course not. Of course not. And Anthony, hang on. Now, let's just finish this one off, shall we? Those 48% are in a great position. They're representative of the Liberal Democrats. They're now representative of the Labour Party. They're representative of the Greens. They're representative of the SNP. They're not doing too badly, are they?
Well, where does democracy start and where does it end then, Nigel? If they can't be represented in government.
The fact is, Anthony, they are. Look, they are. Half the cabinet are committed Remainers and probably still are in reality. So look, next point.
48%. Well, what's the big deal? That's democracy, isn't it? But anyway, we'll agree to differ on that point. Your next point, in direct answer to your question, is actually I think Jean-Claude Juncker was absolutely right. I don't see any problem with the United States of Europe. I don't see any problem with the United States of the world. Now, yes, that may be utopia. That may be utopia.
Lovely.
You're divisive, Nigel. You're divisive.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Are you not? So, one world government, Anthony. One world currency.
But can I ask you, Nigel, if we're Brexiting and you think this would further antagonise people, I don't even see why you're even debating about it. Don't worry about it. Let Europe deal with their affairs. We're coming out, and it shouldn't be your concern. Leave it. You want it out. You put the vote, so leave it. I don't even see why this is even a topic for you on your show this evening.
Because Anthony, I care about Europe. I love Europe, not this European Union that is actually tearing Europe apart, with the East and West being split on the migrant issue, the North and South being split over the euro and economics. And I do worry what the future of Europe is with this Juncker plan. And Anthony, I would just say this to you, that you talk about the 48%, I understand that, but remember, that number of 48% has now significantly shrunk, because a lot of people out there either respect the vote and say get on with it, or recognise that all the threats they were told simply haven't come to pass and have changed their minds. And I promise you, Anthony, that 48%, or whatever it is now, 30% probably more likely, they would have shrunk today because of what Juncker has said. Do you not see that what Juncker has said today will make many Remain voters think, gosh, I would never have voted for this?
Well, I don't know. It's actually even strengthened my Remain vote, actually. I was a reluctant Remain voter, but I will say, actually, that strengthened my vote. And everything that I hear on the radio, especially on your show, strengthens my vote even further. But I will say this, Nigel.
Well, that's fine.
I am one for saying that you're absolutely right. The British electorate have had the vote, and let's leave. Yeah, but I would say this again in terms of democracy. I don't see any problem, and I don't understand why Brexiters have a problem with when the deal, comes to the table. Isn't democracy about saying to people,
Anthony,
this is what the deal
Anthony, we'll come to that point. We'll come to that point, Anthony, the other night. Anthony there, from Prime Barnet, a committed believer in the United States of Europe, a fan of Jean-Claude Juncker, and that's fine. But my guess is there aren't many Anthonys in the United Kingdom, fewer perhaps this evening than there were than yesterday. You've been listening to Nigel Farage Show, live from Strasbourg.